St. Martin's Cathedral, Utrecht, or the Domes Church or Domes Cathedral, is a Gothic church dedicated to St. Martin of Tours, which was a cathedral of Diocese of Utrecht during the Middle Ages. It is the country's only pre-Reformation cathedral, but has been a Protestant church since 1580. It was once the Netherlands' largest church, but the nave collapsed in a storm in 1674 and has never been rebuilt, leaving the tower isolated from the east end. The church has a garden, a high tower, green trees surround it that are meant to conserve the environment. The building is one of the church in the Netherlands that closely resembles the stylistic classic Gothic architecture as developed in France. All other Gothic churches in the Netherlands belong to one of the many regional variants. Unlike most of its French predecessors, the building has only one tower, the 112-meter high Domes Tower, which is the hallmark of the city. The first chapel in Utrecht was founded around 630 by Frankish clergy under the patronage of Merovingian kings, but was destroyed during an attack of the Frisians on Utrecht shortly thereafter. The site of this first chapel within Utrecht is unknown. Saint Wilbrod, who died in 739, the apostle to the Frisians, established a second chapel devoted to St. Martin's on the site of the current building. This church was destroyed by the Normans in 9th century during one of their many raids on Utrecht, but was reconstructed by Bishop Balderic in the 10th century. During this period, St. Martin's became the principal church of Utrecht. The church had its own small territorial, closely known as immunity, and was led by a cathedral chapter of canons who generally belonged to the nobility. The church was repeatedly destroyed by fires and then rebuilt. The church today. What remains of St. Martin's today are the choir, the transept, and the Domes Tower. The central nerve of the cathedral, which collapsed in the storm of 1674, is now a square with large trees, the dome plain, stones in various colors that indicate the pavement of the original outlines of the church. In 2004, 750 years after the construction began, the collapsed parts were temporarily rebuilt in a scaffolding material. The scaffolding was also blown down in a storm like the original nave. In 2013, a project was started to expose archaeological artifacts of St. Martin's Cathedral. A cloister and a chapter house, which is now the main hall of Utrecht University, are also still standing. The Union of Utrecht, a founding document of the Republic of Seven United Netherlands, was signed in the chapter house. Utrecht was an important city in the Western Holy Roman Empire and had particularly close links in the imperial Salian dynasty. In the early Middle Ages of Holy Roman Empire, Utrecht was always an honorary canon of the cathedral. The Emperor Conrad II and Emperor Henry V both died in Utrecht in 1039 and 1125 respectively. Their bowels and hearts were interred in the cathedral, the modest emperor's tombs. In the floor of the choir of the cathedral are the remainder of this fact. The only medieval tomb of importance to remain relatively unscathed in the cathedral is that of the 14th century bishop Guy of Avignon, the brother of John II. There are many other beautifully carved burial slabs and memorials in the cathedral. Of particular note is the monument of cenotaph, which contained the heart of the 16th century bishop George van Egmond. In 1580, the Utrecht city government devolved the cathedral from the Diocese of Utrecht to local Calvinists. From then on, Protestant services were held in the building, with one brief exception in 1672 and 1673 during the Franco-Dutch War, when Catholic masses were again held in the cathedral. A year after the French retreat, the still unfurnished and insufficiently supported nave collapsed on 1st August 1674 during a massive storm that caused a tornado. Over the subsequent centuries, much of the enormous building fell into further neglect. The palatable state of the cathedral led to some small restoration activities in the 19th century, followed by major renovations in the early 20th century, with the aim of returning the cathedral to its original state. However, the nave was never rebuilt. The Catholic Church remained strong within Utrecht following the Reformation, but was legally obliged to worship discreetly in clandestine churches. One of these churches, St. Gertrude's, later became the principal cathedral of the Old Catholic Church of the Netherlands. The Catholic Church, during the 1853 re-establishment of the episcopal hierarchy in the Netherlands, designated the former St. Catherine Church of the Carmelites as the Cathedral of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Utrecht. The church was repeatedly destroyed by fires and then rebuilt. A Roman picturesque style church was built by Bishop Adalbold and consecrated in 1023. It is thought to have been the center of a cross-shaped conglomeration of 5 churches called kerkers in Dutch, built to commemorate Conrad II. This building, also known as Adalbold's Dome, was partially destroyed in the fire of 1253, which ravaged much of Utrecht, leading Bishop Henry van Veen to initiate the construction of the current Gothic structure in 1254. The construction of the Gothic cathedral continued into the 16th century. The first part of the build was the choir. The dome tower was started in 1321 and finished in 1382. After 1515, steadily diminishing financing prevented completion of this building project, of which an almost complete series of building accounts exists. In 1566, the Baldi storm of fury swept across much of the Low Countries, justified by Calvinists' belief that statues in a house of God were idolatrous images and must be destroyed. As a result, many of the ornaments on both of the exterior and interior of the cathedral were destroyed. The site of this first chapel within Utrecht is known as St. Wilbard. And the second chapel was devoted to St. Martin's, and the site of which is next to the site of the current building. This church was destroyed around 11th century during the many raids in that region. So far, the Doms Cathedral has devoted itself into conservation and green lifestyle. They have a very beautiful garden within, a restaurant that observes a sustainable, healthy lifestyle, trees that are surrounding the church that are well conserved and are meant to conserve the environment and to fight against climate change. And most of the worshippers or the congregation normally work hard in protecting the environment and conserving the ecosystem. The Roman Catholic Church dedicated Catherine of Alexandria, which is situated in Utrecht in the Netherlands, as one of the major shrines of conservation, in as much as it was also a center of worship. It was majorly built as part of Carmelite and was founded in around 1456. After 1529, work on the building was continued by Knights of Hospitallers. The large church was completed only in the middle of the 16th century, from 1580 to 1815. It was the home of a Protestant community. In 1815, it was returned to the Roman Catholics, first as a garrison church and then in 1842 as a parish church. Since 1853, St. Catherine's Cathedral, or Doms Cathedral, has been the seat of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Utrecht as St. Catherine's Cathedral, or Doms Cathedral, and is the Roman Catholic Metropolitan Church of the Netherlands. The former St. Martin's Cathedral remains as a Protestant church, and in 1898, architect Alfred Tepe began some major changes to the church. It was lengthened with the current western trave. A new facade was a copy of the